Sessions and the Senate, a controversial confirmation hearing for Donald Trump's Attorney General pick. His view on Roe versus Wade.
I believe it violated the Constitution.
Issues in America.
I do believe that we have a crime problem.
And his past.
These are damnably false charges.
We'll have reaction from a leader in the African American community. Pro-life support. Trump's top aide, Kellyanne Conway, says yes to the March for Life. First Lady will discuss Melania Trump's new role and how she may be the next Jackie O. And touching heaven with their fingers, workers refurbish the Church of the Nativity. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 10th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Fireworks as protests break out during a Senate confirmation hearing for Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions. The Attorney General nominee defended his civil rights record. This marks the beginning of 7 confirmation hearings this week, including one today with retired General John Kelly for Secretary of Homeland Security. Jason Calvi was inside Sessions' Senate session today. Jason.
Lauren, abortion, gay marriage, immigration, and religious freedom, just some of the questions leveled against Sessions today. He said he would not support a ban on Muslims entering the country, and he promised to recuse himself of any cases involving Hillary Clinton's emails. Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions, his wife Mary at his side, and some of their 10 grandchildren. Sessions, one of the most staunchly conservative members of the Senate, began his testimony laying out conservative priorities for the Justice Department.
The office of Attorney General of the United States is not a normal political office, and anyone who holds it must have total fidelity to the laws and the Constitution of the United States.
The first question from the ranking Democrat on the committee raised Sessions' stance on abortion.
You have referred to Roe v. Wade as, quote, one of the worst, colossally erroneous Supreme Court decisions of all time, end quote. Is that still your view?
It is. I believe it violated the Constitution and really attempted to set policy and not follow law.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein then turned to the redefinition of marriage.
A majority of the court has established the definition of marriage for the entire United States of America, and I will follow that decision.
Hecklers interrupted his testimony throughout the day.
Stop Sessions! One person, one vote!
Sessions, who was first elected to the Senate in 1996, shot down allegations of racism from 30 years ago.
But I did not harbor the kind of animosities and race-based discrimination ideas that I was accused of. I did not.
Again and again, Democrats asked Sessions how he would handle current U.S. laws that he may have opposed here in the Senate. His response again and again is if it's the law of the land, he'll enforce it. Lauren?
That was a question asked many times. Jason, what's on deck for tomorrow?
Another jam-packed day for Senator Sessions' nomination process. 2 panels, 15 different people will be testifying, some in opposition, including New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, and some in favor of Senator Sessions, including the Fraternal Order of Police.
Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill, thank you. Joining us now is Bishop Harry Jackson, who is the senior pastor at Hope Christian Church, and John Hudak, senior fellow, government studies with the Brookings Institution. Welcome, gentlemen. Bishop Jackson, you have been defending Senator Sessions against allegations of racism. Had a rally last night at the Capitol. Why?
Well, first of all, in this city, people demonize folks by certain epithets and labels. His record is simply this. He put the KKK out of business in Alabama. Also, he was involved in prosecuting a former KKK official for murder and oversaw that guy being executed. And he created the Rosa Parks Museum in Alabama. So if that sounds like a racist, I guess I'm confused.
A lot of the questions that we saw, Bishop Jackson and John, we're going to, if it's the law of the land, will you uphold it? And that happened with marriage equality and with civil rights and with abortion. John, what are some examples of how his private views could conflict with upholding the law?
There's a lot of law right now, thanks to the Obama administration, that tends to conflict with conservative ideology. I think part of that, of course, is same-sex marriage. And as Senator Sessions said in his confirmation hearing today, that is the law of the land. Same-sex marriage has been ruled constitutional. It is his duty to uphold that, even if he disagrees with that. That's true on same-sex marriage, it's true on abortion, and it might be true on a variety of topics that he tends to disagree with.
Bishop, if the Sessions nomination is approved, the United States will have the first pro-life Attorney General since President George W. Bush. He has said that Roe v. Wade violated the Constitution. It denies people to make the laws that they feel are appropriate, and he would uphold it, as we've talked about. But if he's upholding Roe v. Wade, does it even matter that he's pro-life?
It matters, but we do have separation of powers, to your point. I think he's absolutely right. The laws that stand must be enforced the way they have been written. If we want to change Roe v. Wade, if we want to redefine marriage, we've got to go through different channels to do it. It's not appropriate for any Attorney General to just decide, I disagree with this, and the law doesn't matter.
So then, John, how will the Trump administration go about changing those laws? And then what will the Attorney General's role be?
For an issue like same-sex marriage, for an issue like abortion, these are constitutional issues. The Supreme Court has ruled on them. Short of passing a constitutional amendment or starting that process, there's nothing Congress can really do except around the edges. So what needs to happen? The Attorney General, interestingly, plays a very important role in advising a president on Supreme Court nominations. And so as vacancies occur on the court, there is one currently, it would be up to Senator Sessions to have counsel with the president and say, listen, if you care about this issue or that issue or that issue, this is what you need to ask your prospective nominees. That is how changes in a conservative direction would happen on these important issues.
Not through defining law, but through advice.
And that means it's going to be a long-term process. Those of us on the conservative side have to get used to the fact that we can't just flip a switch and reverse the laws. There's a process to put them in, there's a process to change things, and hopefully we'll enforce the laws that are on the books.
Committee hearings are often a test of a president's relationship with Congress. Based on what we've seen so far, a lot of protests, a lot of fiery questioning, what should we expect?
In terms of the Sessions hearing today, we haven't seen anything outside of the norm. Difficult questions from the other side, sometimes difficult questions from your own side are normal. I think the protests within the Senate room, that's not something you see in every case, but this is standard operating procedure, and Sessions did well.
Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. Bishop Harry Jackson, Senior Pastor at Hope Christian Church, John Hudak, Senior Fellow, Governance Studies with the Brookings Institution. As the president-elect prepares to take office, optimism among America's small businesses is soaring. Bloomberg News reports it's the highest since 1980. Trump promises to address jobs and the economy, a key pillar of his campaign. And in a press conference tomorrow, we will hear more about that. Wyatt Goolsbee reports.
Yeah, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. It's very simple. All I can say is it's very simple.
President-elect Donald Trump insists it will be simple to disentangle himself from his business interests. But we won't find out until tomorrow when he'll give his first press conference in nearly 6 months. He is saying he plans to work with Jack Ma, the founder of e-commerce giant Alibaba, to help boost small businesses.
Jack and I are going to do some great things. Small business, right? Just
we'll focus on small business.
Ma says Alibaba is positioned to create 1 million U.S. jobs by helping Americans sell their products to Asian consumers.
We also think that China-U.S. relationship should be strengthened, should be more friendly and do better.
The duo gave no details on such a deal, but Ma's plan to open up trade is not new. Last year in an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, he said, quote, "We want to connect small businesses in the West with the largest, fastest-growing market in the East." Trump's cozy relationship with the Chinese businessman is a sharp contrast to his harsh critique of China on the campaign trail.
He really is playing with fire.
Economist Desmond Lockman says Trump is right to call China a currency manipulator, but Lockman warns if Trump vilifies China, there will be negative consequences.
The real danger of Trump's policy approach is that he could ignite a global trade war in which there are only losers, that we don't have countries winning and others losing. Everybody loses by having trade restricted in a big way.
Wyatt Goolsby, EWTN News Nightly.
One of President-elect Donald Trump's top aides, Kellyanne Conway, is going to speak at the March for Life on January 27th. This is the 43rd year for the march. This is last year's march, and it stretches from the National Mall to the Supreme Court. EWTN will have live coverage. The head of the congressional committee overseeing the District of Columbia says he'll block the so-called Death with Dignity bill. Representative Jason Chaffetz says he fundamentally disagrees with assisted suicide. The bill would allow patients with 6 months or less to live to request lethal medication from their doctors. Both houses of Congress and the White House must agree to overturn the message. Convicted church shooter Dylan Roof showed no remorse in his closing statements today. Roof said he wasn't sure what good it would do to ask jurors for life in prison instead of execution. Jurors began deliberations this afternoon. If they are not able to make a unanimous decision, a life sentence is automatically imposed. Roof killed 9 black church members during a Bible study in South Carolina in June of 2015. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The Senate continues to investigate Russia's alleged interference into the 2016 presidential election. Today, the director of the FBI repeated the agency's claims. Russia hoped to help Trump by hurting Clinton.
Russia aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman says the Kremlin believes the U.S. accusations of election hacking have no substance. He called them amateurish. The Taliban claims responsibility for 2 large bombs which exploded near government offices in Kabul, Afghanistan. At least 38 people are dead. A suicide bomber struck as workers were leaving a compound of government and legislative offices. The second bomb exploded minutes later. Today's attacks in Kabul are the deadliest in months. And a top Catholic official in Northern Ireland abruptly resigns. Martin McGuinness has been tasked with keeping the peace between the Catholic Sinn Féin group and the Protestant Democratic Unionist Party. This ends the power sharing set up under the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which brought an end to what was called the Troubles, returning self-government to Northern Ireland. Many people in Congo are putting their faith in the Catholic Church to broker a political deal. More than a dozen bishops returned to the capital of Kinshasa to mediate talks. Crisis was sparked by President Joseph Kabila's refusal to leave office, but he has reportedly agreed to let the bishops negotiate a succession plan. It would deliver the nation's first democratic transition in more than 50 years. And a new report finds that last year, a Christian was killed somewhere in the world every 6 minutes. The study for the Center of Global Christianity says about 90,000 Christians were killed for their faith. The group found more than 500 million Christians cannot freely profess their faith and were impacted. Our partners at the National Catholic Register have more on the report, and you can read it now at ncregister.com.
De la creación y contra las injusticias.
The Holy Father is praying for Christians serving humanity this month. The Pope's January prayer intention, he says Christians working together to serve others is a source of joy. Coming up, closer look at Obama's lasting legacy as the president prepares to deliver his farewell speech. Pope Francis plans to meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Abbas will travel to the Vatican Saturday morning. The meeting comes a year after a comprehensive agreement between the Holy See and Palestine went into full force. That agreement reaffirmed the support to resolve the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis. The head of the Vatican's Office for Doctrine says there is no need to correct Pope Francis over his teachings on divorced and civilly remarried Catholics. He says there's no danger to the faith in what the Pope has said. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller was responding to a public request from 4 cardinals for the Holy Father to clarify his position laid out in the document, The Joy of Love. He made the comments in an interview on Italian television. Mary Shovlin joins us from Rome. Mary, what did Cardinal Mueller say about this issue?
Well, his comments came this past Sunday on Mediaset's TGCom 24, and he said the Pope's teaching on this issue, along with church doctrine, is very clear. And he said he was exhorting them all as pastors throughout the church to discern with these couples while they're in these irregular situations that are outside the norms for Catholic marriage. And the Pope is particularly emphasizing a way to get these couples back into, reintegrated into the life of the church, having been cut off to the sacraments. They're being asked as pastors to look at ways to reintegrate them, and Cardinal Mueller is all for that. He has said he's categorically against, of course, anybody who's civilly remarried, divorced and civilly remarried, to receive communion. He has stated that publicly, but he does fully support a way to reintegrate them into the life of the church.
How is Cardinal Mueller viewing this decision by his fellow cardinals to publish their doubts about Pope Francis's teachings in the press?
Well, it was very revealing in the interview. He said he was astonished that they had decided to go public with these dubia, these doubts that they had. He said anyone, of course, is welcome to question the Holy Father from the laity, but especially so Roman Catholic cardinals are certainly welcome to question the Holy Father. He said they certainly had every right to do so, but he thought it was damaging for the church as a whole for them to go public with it. The cardinals, for their part, the ones who sent the letter to Pope Francis, are saying they did so out of deep concern for souls and a great collegiality that they feel that they do have with Pope Francis.
Mary Shovlin reporting from Rome. Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
President Barack Obama is back in Chicago tonight making his final presidential speech in the city where his political career got its start. He's expected to tell Americans not to lose faith in their future, no matter what they think about their next president. Joining us now is Jason Russell, contributing editor with the Washington Examiner. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. The White House is saying tonight's speech will not be a victory lap, although I think we're going to have to make sure to double check that. The call to motivate people is what's going to be on his mind. Is this motivation going to be anti-Trump, do you think?
That's a great question. I think, certainly Obama's going to look back at his 8 years, and even though it's not a victory lap, he is going to defend a lot of his accomplishments, especially when it comes to some of his immigration executive actions, especially when it comes to Obamacare for sure. And while those won't be a direct attack on President-elect Trump, it will be kind of a subtext of, it's important to keep these things in place in Obama's view.
This is a very important speech. It goes back to 1796 when George Washington actually hand-wrote out 32 pages saying, "Friends and citizens, farewell." How important is it to Democrats tonight to hear this speech and others who are really unhappy with the election results?
I think it's really important for President Obama to kind of set the stage for the next generation of Democratic leaders. Because no matter what he does in the next 4 to 8 years, he can't run for president again. They need to have a new generation of leadership if they want to have another big impact on the federal level. They need a new Barack Obama, basically. Right. So it's important for him to kind of step aside and show that he's going to support the next generation.
I think that he's actually said that one of the things that he really does want to do is grow that next generation of leadership. He'll be staying here in Washington. He has a house not very far from our studio. And it will be interesting to see how he does that. Do you have any insights on that?
Exactly. If he's going to do it, he's going to have to do it behind the scenes, because if he is too public about it, then he risks kind of sucking the air out of the political debate, and it'll be a big distraction for anyone who's trying to rise up in their own right. So he really has to do it behind the scenes and groom people behind the scenes without attracting too much attention.
I wonder if he'll mention all the perks that are going. This is his last trip on Air Force One.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a couple jokes about that. Obviously, it's nice to live in the White House. You get a lot of nice stuff there. You get your own chef and things like that. A very nice garden, a great view, or so I hear. So certainly, if I were the president, I would
be
miss
saying
those.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I would be too. I guess he gets to get on that airplane one more time as he flies away to some warm destination. I think that's what he told Oprah. See ya, is what he's going to be saying. All right, thank you so much. Jason Russell, contributing editor with the Washington Examiner.
Thank you.
Up next, the role of First Ladies, how Melania Trump could break the mold. And restoring Christ's birthplace, workers celebrate a new milestone at the Church of the Nativity. Pope Francis names a new bishop to Salt Lake City. Bishop Oscar Solis will become the first Filipino-American bishop to lead a diocese in the U.S. He was born in the Philippines and came to America in 1984. He served in New Jersey and Louisiana before heading to Los Angeles as an auxiliary bishop. He'll be installed in Salt Lake City March 7th. 10 days until the Trumps move into the White House, the role of First Lady is a highly visible and varied one. Traditionally, she's the hostess of the White House. Joining me now is Andy Oak, author of Unusual for Their Time, On the Road with America's First Ladies. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back.
You are welcome. Donald Trump promises to be a very non-traditional president. Melania Trump is not moving here with Barron, saying that she's very concerned about making sure he has his schooling taken care of. Do you expect her to follow in the footsteps of her husband and be a non-traditional First Lady?
Well, Melania Trump has the opportunity that every First Lady before her has had. She can make this role her own. She's choosing family first, which is not unusual. The Obamas have done this, the Clintons, the Carters, Kennedys, anyone that has raised a young family in the White House. But by not coming here right away, it is unusual. Not unprecedented, but unusual.
They traditionally have a focus. Michelle Obama was childhood obesity. Laura Bush was reading literacy. What do you think hers will be?
Well, the thing that she has announced, the cyberbullying, I think is a good one. Bullying has been something that's been around as long as we've been around, and it's not been conquered or figured out. And the internet adds a whole new aspect to that. So the fact that she's modernizing a sort of age-old problem, I think is very smart. I think she could do some wonderful things like bringing Hollywood on board and use some of her celebrity. If she could get Lady Gaga, who's a big anti-bullying advocate, on board. She was a big Hillary person. So if you could bring together that in a cause, I think it would be absolutely fantastic.
Very bipartisan.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of, you are so steeped in the history of First Ladies. Give us some examples of First Ladies in things that they have done that we might not expect.
Well, you know, from the very beginning, I've found in my research that a lot of what we now are surprised by has been going on for a long time. Abigail Adams did not spend very much time in Washington, D.C. She spent a lot of time in Massachusetts. They were the first family to move into the completed White House, and she didn't like it. It was unfinished. She thought D.C. was a swamp. Bess Truman, in more modern times, did not spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C., but she was her husband's closest confidant. She was in on decisions about the war, very significant decisions. We know this. Edith Wilson, before her, signed papers for the president when he was hung up with a stroke. She's actually technically the first female president of the United States, Edith Wilson. So it's amazing the things that have been going on before we knew about them.
Right. Do you think that her being foreign-born is something that is interesting about her? Have we ever had a foreign-born or someone whose first language wasn't English?
Well, she is the first lady that English is not her first language. But she's not the first foreign-born. Louisa Catherine Adams, John Quincy Adams' wife, was born in London in 1775. Now, at that point, they thought it was a political liability because we were trying to be America and get our own identity. Now, I would think in this big global economy and wide world web that we live in, this is a positive. And Melania Trump, if she chooses to step out on that international stage, speaking 5 languages, I believe, and as young and as attractive and the fashion icon that she is, internationally speaking, she could be the next Jacqueline Kennedy. Easily.
Wonderful, wonderful. Andy Oak, boy, do you know a lot about First Ladies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Workers restoring the church on the site where Jesus was born say it's the most satisfying job of their career because they are, quote, touching heaven with their fingers. We're looking at Friday's Orthodox Christmas celebrations at the 4th century Bethlehem Church. Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Armenian churches all share ownership of this. The 14 million euro restoration is more than halfway finished. You'll be able to see it in 2020. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, you can see every broadcast of the show on EWTN's YouTube channel, and I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night, and God bless.